Hi, I'm Victoria, and welcome to this little mini class on indie publishing. What we've got here is a breakdown and a starter guide for authors from another author. A little introduction. First of all, like I said, I'm Victoria. I'm a writer, a coffee drinker, and I work in Christian ministry in Japan. I've been telling stories my whole life, and publishing was part of my plans since I was a very young child. I was around 13 when my dad started helping me research what self publishing was, how I could go about doing it. It was kind of still a little bit of a new thing at the time, but I knew in that moment that I would become a published author someday, and that for me, the route to go was indie publishing. So I released 2 books before I was 20, as well as posted countless stories on my blog as a teenager. And then I headed across the globe to go to college as a young adult. During that time, I took a step back from writing to focus on my schooling and a lot of other things. But then in the years to follow, I ended up battling a lot of doubts concerning my true calling in life. I questioned my capabilities, my potential, even my worth as a human and a creative. It was a hiatus of learning, maturing, and figuring out what truly matters, both for my life and career. So I returned to publishing with a fresh start in 2021, and the journey continues on. Now I have released an ebook only novella, and I'm in the process currently of editing the first book in a series as well as writing the second book in the series. Publishing for me now is not my main career. However, it is a very huge part of my life still. It's something that I'm really passionate about, not only to see my own writing flourish, but I'm also really passionate about seeing other creatives thrive as well. I believe that you are capable of great things, and I'd really love to be part of your journey, whether that's by providing you with resources or working with you directly in some capacity, or even just by welcoming you into an environment designed to inspire and empower. I'm really grateful you're here. Something that I like to remind myself a lot of that I just want to pass on right now is that the magic of the journey is the transformation that happens along the way, the challenges faced head on and overcome, and the growth that happens in the quiet. And I think that's really important to remember it in any facet of life, but especially when it comes to the creative world. It's easy to feel like success is grand book deals or highly prolific author careers or fame or lots of sales or lots of fans. These markers of supposed success tend to be a little bit more noticeable or flashy, and I just want you to know that that is not necessarily a measure of success. It can be part of your success, but there is so much more that goes into it. And a lot of the things that are part of your success as a creative or as an author are things that are going to be happening behind the scenes and that maybe a lot of people aren't even going to ever see. Okay, let's just do a quick overview of what we're going to be covering in this presentation. We're going to be going over the publishing types and kind of get into what might be the best route for you or what some of the pros and cons are. We're going to also cover the basic cost breakdown of indie publishing, the basic journey. We'll talk a little bit about the simple route or the minimal route, and then we're going to jump into the marketing role. And last but not least, we're going to talk a little bit about knowing yourself as a creative. So let's get right in. First off, we've got the publishing types. What is the best option for you? The first thing you need to know is that there is no right or wrong way to approach publishing. In fact, there are pros and cons to any route you could take. The key is to discover what's the best option for you and then go from there. There are about 6 different journeys you can take to publishing. Some places or some people might combine a few of these depending on interpretations, but I like to keep it as these 6 because I think that they cover all the possible routes to getting your book in print. These 6 approaches would be traditional publishing, hybrid publishing, indie publishing, ebook only publishing, vanity publishing, and self-publishing. First off, we have the routes that involve publishing with or publishing as the publisher. Let's just jump right in with probably the most famous way to go about publishing, and that's traditional publishing. It's definitely the longest standing publication route. Traditional publishing is where the author will send submissions to publishers, usually via an agent, until you're accepted, and then you'll be signed on for a book deal. From there on, you'll work with your publisher to get your book to the market. This is the way that publishing has been done for years, and a lot of times in the past when people heard that you published a book, they would assume it was by this method. There are still some people who think that you're not a real published author unless you go traditional. But that kind of thinking is very swiftly being considered outdated. Some of the pros of traditional publishing is that you can focus a lot more on simply the writing part of being an author. In this day and age, a lot of publishing companies will still require the author to do marketing to a degree, but you're still mainly a writer, and that's your role. Some more pros of traditional publishing is that you will instantly have access to a lot of your bigger brick and mortar bookstores. You're more likely to be able to get into libraries a lot easier or indie bookstores. And there are also more opportunities for you to potentially get other kinds of deals, such as film or other translations around the world. And this could be a pro or a con depending on how you feel about it, but if you do well, a lot of times the publisher may end up signing you on for a contract to release books in the future as well. Some of the cons of traditional publishing is that you as the author don't have as much say or power over all the decisions that are made. Things like cover design, you might have some input, but ultimately it will be the publisher making these decisions. It also can be quite difficult to be picked up traditionally, and it can take a lot longer for your book to hit the shelves. It's definitely a process. And to be fair, every single route is a process, so it kind of just comes down to which one's the best one for you. But if you're going the traditional route, you're going to have to be prepared for the potential or the probability of a lot of rejection. You'll have to grow some thicker skin and understand that you might not get picked up right away or ever. One of the caveats of traditional publishing is that they are publishing books for a market that's already established. So there are a lot more rules that you need to fit into, such as genre rules and the length of your novel and those sort of things. If you're wanting to write something a little bit more experimental or a little bit different, or maybe it's a genre that's not quite so popular, it might be harder to get an agent or a publisher to sign you on. Next up, we have hybrid. This middle-of-the-road option involves a partnership between a small press and the author. It's also known as assisted publishing. In hybrid publishing, the author retains control of the process, but they are helped along by the publisher. The author often still must cover the expenses, though. The press will guide the process of fundraising and publishing. So with this situation, a lot of times you'll probably still have a contract or something like that, but you might not always need an agent to get in. With a small press, you might be able to send an application or manuscript during certain times that they're open for new books. It has a lot of the pros of traditional publishing in that you're working with a press, so they know what they're doing, they know the book world, the book market, and you don't have to have that learning curve as much for yourself on your shoulders. But the difference with hybrid versus traditional is that you do still have to cover a lot of the upfront costs. And even the payouts might be a little bit different in how they're structured compared to traditional or even indie publishing. This is a really good option for people who have a book that might fit in with a niche press, though. Often you have small presses that cater towards very specific reader markets like clean romance or fantasy or gritty fiction with truth, and they have a very specific target demographic. So if your book fits into those categories, you may have some pretty good success with teaming up with a small press. Because a lot of people who follow small presses or buy books from small presses end up really trusting them as a name or as a book recommendation source, so they often will buy whatever the press puts out. It's a great way to tap into reader groups that are already there. Indie publishing is when an author starts their own company or teams up with an independent publisher to get their books to market. Often indies are grouped as self-publishers, but the approach is quite different. Indie publishing is usually viewed as a serious business or career. Often, authors will start their own company, even if it's something as simple as their name. But sometimes indie authors will team up with indie publishers. These are a little bit different from hybrid publishing because the independent publisher will help the process of publishing to some extent, but it is still primarily on the author to do the work. They may just be under the name of the publisher or be assisted with the formatting side of things or that sort of thing. Independent publishers are often a lot smaller than hybrid press as well. They can grow and they can sometimes even morph into hybrid situations, but it's definitely a very entrepreneur type situation when it's indie. Some other pros with indie publishing is that as the sole person in charge of every single detail, you have a lot of control. This does mean that you have a lot more work to do as well, and there's the potential for a pretty steep learning curve on different things. but everything comes back to you and your vision for your book. One of the downsides is that because you have to do everything, you have to split your time between writing as well as the other things that go into publishing a book. But some people can really enjoy that process and really thrive in that process. Another positive thing about indie publishing is that you don't have to wait on anybody to decide to publish your book. You're the one in control, and if you want to publish something, you can. Next up, we have the options for publishing on your own or publishing for yourself. And I do make a little bit of distinction between those two because sometimes people choose to get something in print and it's pretty much just for their own library or their friends and family. And then there's other times when people do want it to be like on the market, but in a different way from indie publishing. We'll get to that in a second. First up in this section is the ebook only publishing. Ebook only publishing is a popular option for those who want to emphasize considerable content production. Publishing only as ebooks is less costly and a swifter way of getting your work out there than publishing ebook and a print copy. And as more readers are choosing to consume books on devices, this is a really great way to publish to meet specific demands. The rise of BookTok and book girlies really impact the consuming of books in a specific way, and Kindle is still going strong. In fact, I'd say it's even picking up in the past couple of years. This route is definitely not for everyone, but if you're wanting to get your books out there and quickly and carve out a space for yourself within a certain market to meet certain demands, ebook only can be a great way to do that if it's done correctly. It can be a great way to get a lot of sales. Usually, people who do ebook only will tend to target specific genres or tropes that are really popular with binge readers. So a lot of that is going to be fantasy and romance in this day and age, but it's not to say that it can only be fantasy and romance. There's also a great market for cozy mysteries and even potentially some elements of self-help books or certain types of historical fiction. Ebook only has some cons in that you don't actually get a print copy. So if you want to have your book in bookstores or libraries, or you want to be able to actually see it on your own shelf, ebook only can be a little bit disappointing in those regards because it's all digital. However, the pros is it doesn't take near as much effort or money to produce an ebook, and depending on what you write, you might be able to crank them out really quickly, which will lead to more sales. Next up, we've got self-publishing. This is for those who simply want copies of their book, or maybe they have only one book that they want to release. Self-publishing is the way to go if you're not looking to make a whole career out of it, but you do want your own book. It's less of a career move and more of an achieving moment. Often, self-publishers will fund their own way and use a print-on-demand option. There are many options out there for print-on-demand companies. Probably the most famous one would be, of course, Kindle Direct Publish, which is with Amazon. But there are other companies out there that will do print-on-demand as well. Self-publishers will usually pay out of pocket for the process, or they may do a little bit of funding from friends and family, but primarily they have one or two books that they want to release, or maybe a series, but they're not looking to do a deep dive into publishing. They just want their passion projects on their shelf. So this is a great option for those kinds of scenarios. Some of the cons of self-publishing is that there is still a bit of stigma around the term self-publishing, and although that is decreasing, you might still get some unwanted stereotypes or comments. Obviously, another con would be that you have to pay for everything yourself, and it might not necessarily be something that gets you a lot of money in return. It's definitely more of a passion project type of route, but the pro is that if there is something you want to do or a book you want to release, as a self-publisher, you can do that and nobody's stopping you. Last but not least, we have vanity publishing. It's also known as a subsidy publisher. Vanity publishing involves the author paying out of pocket to get several hundred copies of their book printed, or potentially more, but usually it's about several hundred copies. In other words, this is not a print-on-demand service, but it's an actual printer that will print a specified amount of your book. This was often done in the past by people who wanted to provide their work within a circle of family, friends, or specific social places like a church or a homeschool group. This was much more common 20 years ago. Nowadays, you don't see quite as many vanity publishing scenarios, but it is still an option. It does tend to cost a little bit more upfront, though. The reasons why you might want to go with vanity publishing is if you're not really that interested in having your book on Amazon or ebook, but you primarily just want copies of your book to be able to sell at specific venues. So again, like a homeschool group or a writing convention or to your family, friends at book club. You're not really interested in anybody outside of those circles having access to the book. So those are the 6 types of publishing. They all have their pros and their cons. They're all fairly good options depending on what it is you're wanting to do. But the rest of this class will be focusing primarily on the indie publishing / self-publishing route. That's what I've done. So if you're interested in self-publishing or indie publishing, stay tuned. So first up, we have the basic journey, what the process might look like for you. And of course, everybody's journey may look a little bit different, and that's going to be expected. So this is just an overview of what the average might look like or what it could look like. Indie publishing is a journey, and it involves a lot more than people often expect. The process is fairly complex, but it doesn't have to be intimidating. In fact, the more you can get others involved along the way, the better. This is something I actually have to remind myself of a lot because I tend to really go lone wolf on a lot of things, but the more you can get others involved and excited during the process, the better off you'll be. So let's take a look at this basic indie publishing timeline. This is the process to the printing. Obviously, step 1 is writing and drafting your book. This can take several rounds of writing and drafting, and it will take however long it takes. Some people crank out their draft in a couple months, and other people can take a couple of years. It's really not of importance. What is important is that you do have your book written. I always say that to be a writer, all you have to do is write and get those ideas onto the page. The second step would be your editing and proofreading stages. This usually does involve multiple types of editing as well as multiple rounds. You've got developmental editing, you've got line-by-line editing, content editing, you've got proofreading, and so on. This is usually the time when you will want other eyes to see your work and or hire professionals. Another step along the way is the cover and interior design. This is either something you probably want to hire somebody to do or at least get some pretty good templates to work with that help you out, which those can be purchased fairly easily. And I also recommend doing a good bit of study on what cover design looks like in interior design. And there are also programs that can help you with that. Then step 4 is alpha and beta teams. Now, technically, alpha teams will be happening probably in between step 1 and 2, and the beta teams might be happening anywhere from after step 2 to step 4. But this is just when you have people reading your book. So alpha teams will be reading your book either right after your first draft or even as you're drafting, depending on your preferences. Not everybody has alpha teams, but I do tend to really appreciate the insight alpha readers can give during the initial stages. It can really help guide the direction of your book and make sure that it's resonating with readers, as well as making sure you're getting your points across correctly. So alpha teams will just be giving you feedback on all the initial writing, and then beta teams are the ones that come in after things have been edited and proofread, and they give their feedback then. From there, you probably have another round of editing using their input, but what they're looking at is something that is much closer to the final product, a more polished version of the book, if you will. So they can come in as readers and share their thoughts before the final release stages. Step 5 is planning the book launch and forming your launch teams. This is where you start marketing, where you start planning your release, you start organizing ARC readers or advanced readers and reviewers. You may be also able to do a pre-order system, and also potentially this is where you might do a Kickstarter. This step is focusing on all the details involved in getting your book to print. And some people may do their Kickstarter earlier, just depends on the person. Step 6 is submitting your files, reviewing your proof copy. This is all the nitty-gritty things, getting your ISBN number. It's a lot of reviewing and checking, formatting of your ebook files, and a lot more on the technological side of things. This is also when you're going to hold your book for the first time in your hands when you review your proof copy, and you can check for any mistakes then. And then last but not least is your launch. The release day usually has a lot involved in it with promotional aspects, marketing, making sure your review teams and all the people who have promised reviews are reviewing your books for you, getting their posts up, helping spread the word. You might be doing a launch party or a giveaway at this time. And then as time goes on, the journey continues. You have to continue marketing your book. It's not enough to just put it out into the wild. You have to make sure people know that it is out there. So let's talk about a cost breakdown and do a little bit of exploring of the expenses that may be involved in publishing. So when it comes to polishing your book, obviously some of the biggest costs are going to be your editing and proofreading costs. Most editors and proofreaders charge by the word count, and the cost can vary by editor, type of editing, and the length of your book. A round of editing can easily cost $1,000, but with research, you can probably find someone who fits your budget, as the prices can be so across the board. Some editors are very expensive and some are a little bit more affordable. It really just depends on the editor and what they have put their prices at, as well as how long your book is. That really can affect your costs of a lot of things when it comes to editing and proofreading. That is one reason why it might be beneficial to stick to standard word counts for genres. As you are an indie author, you technically have pretty free reign on things like how long your book is, but at the end of the day, you do have to think about the fact that longer books, or even really short books, will cost more to edit and to print. And so these are just some things to keep in mind. If you're able to hire editing for multiple rounds in proofreading, that is excellent. But if at all possible, there should be at least one other set of eyes for a round of editing and a round of proofreading. It's really easy to get so used to your own work that it's a lot harder to spot mistakes, so having multiple pairs of eyes on things can be very helpful. Another thing that is a cost is your ISBN numbers. Unless you decide to use free ones provided by Amazon or some other print-on-demand company, you are going to need to buy ISBN numbers for every single format of your book. That means ebook, audiobook, paperback, hardcover. Each of these are going to require their own ISBN number. A lot of the times you can buy these in packages of 10 or 20 numbers, which will set you back a couple $100s. The good thing is that once you have them, they never expire, so any books you publish after, you've already got the numbers. Another thing in regards to polishing your book that you'll have to consider as a possible cost is your cover design. This pricing will vary depending on how you approach this. If you hire a basic cover designer on a place like Fiverr, it can cost a lot less, but just be aware that the quality may not always be the best on a situation like that, or you may not get exactly what you're looking for. A professional cover designer is going to be much more expensive, but obviously a cover is a good part of what helps your book sell, so that's something that's definitely worth investing in. Another more inexpensive option, though, is buying pre-made templates. If you can find a good designer who puts out pre-made templates, this is a pretty decent option. Sometimes you can find somebody who will have pre-made templates, and then for a much lower price, they will make adjustments for you and customize it for you. There are a lot of options, something to look into. Cover design in general could either be pretty expensive, several $100s easily, or it could be a lot less depending on what you do. Another thing to remember when it comes to cover designing is that if you hire an artist to do custom art, that will be a separate cost from the cover design usually, and that could also cost a couple $100s. So it's just about finding what's within your budget and what works for you and still looks professional. Interior formatting is another thing to think about. This is something that needs to be done for both ebook options as well as print versions, as there are different types of formatting. Ebook options are usually not too pricey, but print interior can start costing more. One option is to purchase templates that are pre-designed to work with yourself. Then you usually import those templates into something like Word or another program, and you do the work to adapt it for your book. And that could be $100 or less, but it does involve a lot more work, and you have to be somewhat knowledgeable about how to use the programs. Otherwise, interior formatting could be a couple of $100s. There are programs like Atticus, that's a $150 lifetime cost, but then you'll be able to format a lot of things in it very easily. Some other possible costs, these are on the marketing side of your book release. Hiring a graphic designer. If you want to hire someone to create graphics for marketing purposes, such as branded social media posts, ads, book mock-ups, or banners for launch blog, parties, book trailers, etc., any of those kinds of media elements, it can be anywhere from $25 to a couple hundred depending on how much you want done and what you do. You definitely don't need to do everything that I just mentioned, but finding what is important to you and going from there is a good idea. Another thing is a promotional planner. If marketing is not your forte and you want to hire a professional to plan your promos, you can count on either a couple hundred to a couple $1,000s depending on what you do. Hopefully this would allow you to be able to make that money back, though, by reaching your target audience and turning them into customers, but it is a lot of money up front. Another thing is hardcover or special editions. This varies by the company you go with, but you could pay at least $100 for special editions and much more if you go all out. The hardcover special editions can be sold for more, however, and they also do provide opportunities for raising support in places like Kickstarter. So if you use Kickstarter and you have things like books that are hardcover or books with sprayed edges or maybe a special cover that's not on the others, it will cost you more money to get these initially, but they could be great rewards for things like Kickstarter systems where people are paying to help you publish the book in the first place. Promotional goodies or giveaways are another thing to think about. If you plan to do release day giveaways or promotional goodies for various tiers on Kickstarter, you got to plan for at least 100 for various items, and you can't forget about shipping costs as well. If you're doing things like giveaways or Kickstarter boxes and things like that, shipping costs add up without people realizing it, especially if it involves international shipping. And then just in general, even with shipping a signed book, you have to think about the shipping costs for that as well. Any sort of release day party, giveaways, or items all go under this. If you're doing things like giving away bookmarks to raise awareness for your book, even those things cost. So it's important not to forget about all those little things as well. Let's talk about Kickstarter. Kickstarter is a great way to finance your book and gain supporters. It's a very popular way to raise the funds necessary for a professional book launch. There are a couple reasons why this is a great idea. By pre-selling with a Kickstarter, you can raise the money needed to cover the expenses before instead of after the book comes out. That way, when the book releases, you've already paid for the process with sales versus having to pay out of pocket and hope you get enough sales to cover what you spent already. By promoting your book in order to get the funding, you are also simultaneously building a fan base of future readers, and that's excellent. When someone commits to something like a Kickstarter, they are making a decision to be excited about what you're doing, and they're in it for the long haul. They're there to see your journey from start to finish, and more often than not, they're going to be fans and share what you're doing with others as well. There are many articles on how to run a successful Kickstarter, but a few quick tips are to think in tiers. Some people want to support but may need to do it in smaller amounts, and some people will be really into supporting you and would love to have a special, more expensive tier. Have incentives of value for each tier. This could be special editions of the book, extra goodies like bookmarks or stickers or art pieces, bonus chapters, character bios, or even things like a curated book box. Another thing to keep in mind is to create connections with each backer. It's not just about the financial aspect. It's important to remember that this is an excellent way to foster community as well. And again, like we already mentioned, build that fan base of future readers. You might be thinking right now, okay, wow, that was super overwhelming. There are lots of costs involved. There are lots of steps involved. I don't know if I can do all that. Well, let's talk about the simple route. This is a minimal journey for smaller releases. Sometimes the process of indie publishing can be just so overwhelming. There are times, though, when a book calls for a simpler route. You might be a good candidate for going a much simpler route if you are a first-time author and you want to test the waters before launching out in a big way, or you're unable to finance a fancy release or get all the fundraising support you needed. It can be difficult sometimes to get the fundraising support if you don't already have an established presence as a writer. Another reason you might want to go the simple route is that you only want to publish 1 or 2 books and aren't planning on a career in writing, aka you want to self-publish versus indie publish. Another reason is if you want to publish a book close to your heart, but you don't have a lot of time or energy for a large-scale operation. You might also want to if you're in a phase of life where you need the win, but not the stress. I honestly can relate to that one. Another reason you might want to go the simple route is if you want to learn the ropes of indie publishing gradually and gain new skills with each book, instead of trying to learn everything all at once. So the simple route might look something like this. Obviously, your first step is to write your book. It can take a few drafts, that's totally normal. The point is, get your words on the paper. Next step is editing. Like I mentioned previously, there are several stages of editing. For this simple route, I really recommend getting an alpha reader to go over your rough draft, and then with that feedback, approach your first few rounds of editing. Then at some point, get another pair of eyes to edit your manuscript. It's really a must to catch things from different perspectives. After editing is proofreading. This is best done by a professional, even if you are quite good at editing yourself, simply because it's difficult to catch mistakes after looking at the same manuscript for so long. If you're able to hire a cover designer, that's fantastic. If that's out of your budget, read up on good cover design and then purchase a template to customize or use a service like Fiverr or some other inexpensive cover designer. A good rule of thumb is if you're going to try to do a cover yourself, is to get as much feedback on it as possible throughout the process, as well as compare the cover to other books in your genre to see if it looks like it would appear natural on a shelf or on a table together with all those other books. It's often relatively easy to find inexpensive options for ebook formatting, but interior designs for your print book may be more expensive. Consider purchasing or finding free templates online, but know that there will be a learning curve involved if you do it yourself. Another excellent option is to invest in software like Atticus, which I already mentioned. Next, it's time to assemble your supporters. Reach out to some book bloggers or Instagrammers in your niche. Allow some readers to sign up for beta reading. Start getting reviews lined up for your book. It's okay if you don't have a huge following or if you're not connected with a lot of people, as long as you can get some key people who are going to really back you. Next is setting up data. Start filling in all the required data for your submission with your print-on-demand company. It's where you address all things like ISBN numbers, copyrights, pre-order options. Next, you'll be submitting your files to be checked to make any changes necessary for them to be accepted. This can be a little bit of a process because often you're going to be submitting files and then they'll be checked by the company who's doing your printing and they get back with you on any changes that might need to be made and so forth. Order your proof copy to review as soon as your files are approved. To receive your proof copy, it might take a couple of weeks, so consider using that empty time to market your book and start doing a little bit of marketing on social media or in person at places like your book club or your library. Let people know that you're about to release a book. Then finally, it's the launch phase. When you release your book, be sure to share about it on social media. Make sure reviews are posted and then celebrate. Giveaways at this time can be a fun option as well as getting your book to local libraries or bookstores. Let's talk about marketing. The marketing role is becoming ever more an integral part to being a writer. Unfortunately, you're not just a writer anymore in this day and age. As an indie author, marketing is yet another thing that falls to your responsibility. And again, I mentioned this at the very beginning, but more and more, even traditionally published authors are expected to market their own book. So, a given at this stage of being an author is that you will have to market. It can seem overwhelming, and for some people, might be downright uncomfortable to promote yourself in your work. I know that's me, but it doesn't have to be that way. Here are a list of possible ways to connect and market as an indie author. And I do like to emphasize the concept of marketing being a tool to connect versus a tool to get people to buy. Because if you struggle at all, like I do, with the idea of putting yourself out there and it just feels embarrassing or uncomfortable for you to promote, thinking of it as connecting can make it a little bit easier because then it reframes the whole process as it being about forming relationships with other people and letting your book be something that hopefully will bring joy or interest or entertainment to others. So, some ways you can market is to reach out to book reviewers, bloggers, book talkers, booktubers, bookstagrammers, all the social medias, especially for those who are in your niche. That way, it's not only you that are more likely to appeal to that reviewer because you're providing them with something they already enjoy reading, but it also means that their following would more likely be people who'd be interested in your book as well because they're following the reviewer for those specific reasons. This can mean finding people who read the same genre or the content types or even tropes and or settings. Promote on your own social media. This is one of the things that I really kind of hate, but try to have fun with it. Find your style and don't worry if it's not what others are doing. There's all kinds of conversations all the time about how the algorithms are and the fact that you have to do all these different things to get picked up on different social media to get interest. But you don't have to use trending audios or dance or make memes if that's not your style. If it is, that's fantastic. If it's not, that's also okay. Just find what flows for you and try to stay consistent. Another thing you can do is give copies of your books to libraries and local bookstores in the area. They're often really excited to meet authors from the area, and they might be able to help you connect with your community even further. If you live in an English-speaking community, this is a great chance to find the readers who are actually in your area. And a lot of times, they will be interested to support local authors, especially local bookstores or indie bookstores. They are a lot like indie authors, and they're just trying to be profitable doing what they love, and the support can go both ways, honestly. Another thing you can do is ask people to review your book on Amazon. Amazon reviews are so important, and they can really help boost your sales as well as help other customers be convinced to purchase your book. You can turn this into a goal that you or your support team work to reach. If you let people know, hey, I want to reach XYZ amount of reviews on Amazon, can we try to make that happen? It can become a fun goal that you do with others. Another thing you can do is have a launch party, either virtually or with people in your circle. Many will be happy to support and celebrate you. And this is really a way to just kind of take a moment to really appreciate how far you've come and really celebrate your book. And it's a lot of fun. It'll be a great moment to maybe get a little bit of relaxation or encouragement before having to segue into the post-publishing marketing stage. You can also connect with local book clubs or maybe even virtual book clubs that fit your niche. You might be able to find more about book clubs from your library or by networking amongst friends you already have, or you might already be a part of a book club. But tapping into that is a great way to find people who are probably very excited to support you or read your books. You can also run giveaways. This can be done by yourself, or this is very popular right now, linking up with other authors for larger giveaway opportunities. So finding people who have written books in a similar genre, or maybe even across several types of genres, but similar tropes, you get the gist, but you decide to band together. Larger giveaway opportunities tend to cultivate more interest, and it'd be a great way to find a lot of new readers, as well as help other authors. One author's followers can connect with another author that they may like, and so on. Keep your website or your blog updated and easy to access as well. Whether you write articles or blog book reviews or share processes behind the scenes, or even if you don't do any kind of blogging but you have a website, just keep it up, make sure your links are always relevant. Whenever you publish something, make it easy to see what books you have and make it easy to find where to buy them. And make sure your links aren't broken. Making your web presence as easy as possible for people to buy your book is super important. And last but not least, you can run sales or free book events via Amazon if you're printing through Amazon. You can put set times where you can run a sale, so like a 99-cent sale, or you can even put your ebook for free. And you can do this on your own, but it's even better, again, if you link up with other authors who are willing to do sales at the same time, so you can create a list of book options for readers. This works kind of like the really popular Stuff Your Kindle days. In a similar way, you can make your own custom list of free books or books on sale, and this really gets people excited and attracts more attention. Last but not least, let's talk about knowing yourself, because ultimately, your journey depends on you. Let's think about this as the long game if you're going in as an indie author. Obviously, it's a journey, and it's important on that journey that you're looking forward for long-term success and you don't cause yourself to burn out. It's really easy to do, especially because indie publishing involves so much and there are so many different responsibilities on your shoulders and so many things to learn. So keep your eyes and your vision forward. Learn how to pace yourself. Finding the rhythms and the structures that work for you is so important, and then being able to stick with it will help you with long-term success. You are not everyone else, and finding the pace that works for you is imperative to your health as a creative. Write the way you want. There are so many different articles and blogs, and at this point, even social media posts and reels and YouTube videos telling you how to do XYZ, and there is a lot of really great information out there, but it's important to find what helps you stay healthy and thriving as a creative. Rhythms, routines, pacing, and structures are very important, but one person's pacing isn't going to be another person's pacing. So really let yourself think about what it is that works for you and how you need to go about it to have your best success. Another thing is to choose your battles. There are many obstacles in the journey of indie or self-publishing, even in the book world. You may find at times there are just so many controversies or fractions, or you're supposed to do all these things, but maybe you can't actually do all those things. Knowing what your values and your priorities are is important. Choose your battles wisely. Invest energy into only what matters on your journey. It's important to know what you stand for within your creative life or in your creative world, and knowing what's important to you in the realm of creativity is going to help you know what is worth spending energy on. And if it doesn't line up with what is important or what you value, it's okay to let it go. You also don't have to get involved with every controversy or have an opinion on everything. It's the era where people expect you to have a stance, but I think it's more important to just know where you stand on what matters to you. Last but not least, know your strengths and weaknesses. One of your biggest opportunities for success is by truly understanding what makes you tick as a creative. Not just what rhythms or structures or routines work, or not just what your values and priorities are, but you at your core, your personality, what it is that makes you get into the zone, or what it is that you find you're really good at, or what elements of writing, publishing you tend to struggle with. I've been through a very long process of trying to figure it out for myself because, again, like I said, already there is so much information out there, and a lot of it is good, but maybe it's not good for you. Or maybe there's information that's saying this is not the way to do it, but for you, that's exactly how you should do it. So as I've really looked into this concept of personalities in writing, I ended up creating the writer archetype system. It's a great way to navigate the writing world for you as a unique individual. It's a system exploring different personality types and how they integrate how their own brains work into their writing life. I think every writer is probably a combination of two of the personality types, and by finding your combination, you can really unlock a lot of insights to really help you thrive. I've created workbooks for each of the archetypes, and in those workbooks, it covers what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, types of routines and systems that work for you, and even what kind of programs or apps that might be a good idea for you to look into. There are also a variety of different writing exercises to really help you grow and thrive as a creative. You can learn more about it on my website, fearlesstype.com. You'll find there a free quiz you can take to get you started, as well as a quick overview of each type. And then if you want to dig in a little deeper, you can find each of the archetype workbooks on the website as well. If you want to get connected with me, again, my website is fearlesstype.com. You can also find me on Instagram at tismev. My Instagram is a bit more of a lifestyle Instagram, but I do talk a lot about books and writing, as well as just living as a creative in Japan. Or you can email me at jpbookbug@gmail.com. I would love to get connected if you have any questions or thoughts, or if you just want to chat about book-related things. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I wish you the best in your writing journey. Bye!